Good morning, folks. Bradford from Beacon Finance and Consulting here, and the topic that I want to talk about today is budgeting, which I consider to be the heartbeat of personal finance. And again, it's deviating from tax a little bit, but I argue that it's not. Because in my place as a tax strategist, if you are a business owner or even an employee and you have a decent amount of cash saved, I can help you plan much easier than if cash is not saved. And in order to save more cash, one of two things has to happen. Either income has to go up or expenses have to go down. Or you could take on debt. That's not necessarily something I would just off the cuff encourage, but that is an option. But this is kind of, going through the overlay of what you can do to at least know what your expenses are, to decide then, should I cut expenses, maybe come up with ways to increase income, revenue, and different ways of thinking about it, which we're going to get into today. So I work with a lot of small business owners, and of course there is a personal aspect to this and a business aspect to this, but of course a lot of them are actually very, very similar and interconnected. And what I am going to say about the business side of the coin is, when we set up a business, there are kind of two ways to think about it. Do I want to set up a business that I own as a purse that I can take money out of at any time that I want to and have it set up from a tax standpoint to do so? Or do I want to set up my business as to reinvest all of the extra money? There's two sides of the coin, and if we were to have a consultation, I would talk through that a little bit more thoroughly, but that is something to consider. And of course, having a budget in the business side would kind of help us decide which one of those two might be more optimal. So in this example, just imagine $5,000 monthly income. There's no tax in this scenario. Yay, because I'm on the team, right? But anyway, simple example, your fixed expenses given the below are $2,500. Your variable expenses, also fixed, are going to be like rent, subscriptions, memberships, things that recur roughly the same amount each month. Car payments, debt payments, student loan payments, utilities. Utilities fluctuate a little bit, but they're roughly the same. We also have variable expenses, groceries, gas, entertainment, eating out, hobbies, all the fun stuff, and the noise, coffee shops, that sort of thing. And let's say that those are $1,000, a month. That leaves you with $1,500 of money to decide what to do with. And basically, there are three overarching things that you can do. You can save it, you can spend it, and you can invest it. Now, which one should you go ahead and do? Well, it depends, as always. And of course, this requires a little bit of time, but I want to touch on these. And I borrowed these from Tony Robbins, that we have 6 human needs. And there's also some examples of entrepreneurs, owners who have differing needs. So there's a need for certainty. Basically, this would cling to an emergency fund, having a lot of cash in the bank. Safety, stability, not letting things fluctuate, controlling what can be controlled. There's a need, if we have all of our certainty met, life gets kind of boring sometimes. So we need a little bit of variety. Variety is the spice of life. It could be from, business owners tend to go through a lot of variety just because it's excitement. It's a new risk. It's a new adventure. We also have a need for significance, to basically feel important. But that could also come at the cost of love and connection. We have a need to feel connected and plugged into our community, plugged into other people. If we're really, really significant, that could come at a cost of that connection. From there are spiritual needs, growth, getting better, learning more each and every day, getting 1% every time, 1% better every day leads to, what is it, 35 times a multiple over a year? It adds up very, very quickly. But we could meet all of these needs, right? And what is it for if we don't actually give something back? At least have the feeling that we are giving something back higher than ourselves. Maybe it's our community. Maybe it's God, life, the universe. So anyway, I'm not going to go into that too much. But what I will say is, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates, they could operate meeting this need for certainty, having a boatload of cash ready to go. So they were more about saving it. Now, of course, Warren Buffett, as we know, also would invest it, but he has a lot of cash saved, and he talks about this in his shareholder meetings. He owns insurance companies, and he wants to be able to be sure that he can pay out the cash needed for claims, as those fluctuate from time to time. Bill Gates was the same way. He had, I believe, 1 year's worth of expenses saved in cash, so Microsoft could go without collecting any revenue at all and pay all of its expenses for a year. So that's their side of the coin. But you also, on the flip side, have Richard Branson, Elon Musk, Steve Jobs, and their philosophy basically is if they have a lot of cash, they are not very productive. They need to deploy the cash so they can tap into their own resourcefulness to, if you want to take the island, burn the boats. There's no escape route. So that was kind of their philosophy. And most of us are going to fall somewhere in between, but we're going to lean closer to one of those. So balancing those two, and you might make some changes based on what you are and where you fall at in these scales. But something that kind of balances this, it really ties to Dave Ramsey and a lot of his teachings, which at first I was meeting that need for certainty. But if we really want to tackle this stuff, having some of that pressure will help us achieve these goals quicker. But of course, ultimately it's your plan and it's up to you. And having a starter emergency fund somewhere in the realm of $500 to $1,000 just in savings. From there, pay off the high interest debt over 7%. Dave Ramsey would say pay them all off. I'm not as worried about the debts over 7%, under 7%, but that is up to you. Snowball is much more psychologically reasonable, and that's where you basically list debts from smallest amount to the largest. There's also what's known as the avalanche method, which is the coldly rational approach, which is take the interest rate and pay off the highest interest first. Thing is, it could take you years to pay off a high interest debt because they tend to be, they just tend to be a lot. And it can be very demoralizing if we do the highest, if we have a balance, a huge balance, it's also the highest interest. I mean, there's just not a whole lot of psychological reward. And most of this stuff is about psychology, not raw math. So we have to find out what works for us. And that's what these needs are for. From there, once we get those debts worked down and paid off, fund the emergency fund 3 to 6 months worth of expenses. From there, go ahead and invest, whether it's a retirement account, a brokerage account, or our own business. The thing that I will say about investing in the business, and sometimes it even makes sense, depending on you, to juxtapose that in here somewhere, because there's no upside in return that you have potentially than having a successful business. So I hope this helps. I hope this helps you kind of streamline things. This is a good way to start. And of course, over time, identify which one of these needs you align with and see where you fall in the scale, because it all is a spectrum. And we need to meet our psychological needs. What is it? It's better to be psychologically reasonable than coldly rational. Unless coldly rational is just your modus operandi. Until next time.